Hi, I'm Jerry Portwood, host of the Queer Love podcast. I had the pleasure of being a guest on the podcast Unseen, Queer Millennial Life Unfiltered earlier this year, and today I'm excited to have the hosts, Laura Lee Abbey and Erica Bacon, the creators and hosts of Unseen, join me today. Thanks for joining me, Laura Lee,
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to chat again.
and thanks for being here, Erica.
Thanks for having us.
Well, so I want to explain to people that your show, which celebrates queer millennials and Gen Zers, you have these honest conversations and humor stories. It's a mix of all the messy, beautiful spaces that we live in. And you've built this community that's centered on visibility, identity, connection, and the realities of queer life as we navigate adulthood, which is perfect for the Queer Love podcast as well. So it's a perfect combo to have you guys here. But I want to start with the obvious. Your show's tagline explicitly highlights queer millennial lives. And I want to know what that means to you. Like, I'm, I guess what you called a zennial. Like, I'm 1977, so I'm a Gen Xer on the cusp. So tell me, what is it that uniquely defines the millennial queer experience compared to Gen Z or older generations?
I think for us, I mean, the construct of generations is kind of crazy, but there's a slight difference sometimes with the Gen X and the millennial kind of crowd. The first thing that comes to mind is that I think that, in a short span of 5, 7 years, right? My wife is 5 years older than me. I grew up learning more about just queer life and language, right? Like I feel the Gen X world was very much like you are a butch or you are a femme, and those are your two boxes, fit into them and figure it out. And for us, also highlighting the word queer, it is very expansive. It's open. And I think that, in our world, we've learned a lot from Gen Z as far as, adapting to language. But at the same time, I think we're in this interesting spot where we kind of grew up with both worlds. So now we're just, encompassing kind of all the above.
Well, and I think also what defines this, I've been reading Hugh Ryan's new book called My Bad. It's about his queer life in the 90s. And he's a little bit younger than me, probably a tiny bit older than you, but it's this analog into the digital. So you guys also share that, right? Like we remember what it was like before the apps and digital, but we also have embraced it. How about you, Laura?
Yeah, I feel like we do. We have both of those experiences, right? Social media started when I was in college, and it just really changed the way we all communicated. It changed the way that you're able to access your community, queer community, and in a lot of our instances, to be able to access queer entertainment. So many of those things came later because even though they existed maybe in a smaller way in the past, it became a lot more accessible as much as I rail against so much technology, it did become accessible for us. So yes, we have that memory of the before time, and we were still young enough when a lot of it happened that it is part of our lives.
I was a late bloomer when it came to the internet. I had a computer at home, but I was way too nervous to use it for anything like, looking for sex or talking to boys or anything like that. I did not do that until like 2001 probably. And so in a
Yeah.
way I relate to, all of it, but I didn't do it in the 90s. Do you remember like your first online experience?
I definitely do.
I remember going to chat rooms like age, sex,
Oh
location.
my, right? It was so
I was
creepy.
way too young to be doing that.
So creepy. I did not have the internet at that point, so I used to go to my neighbor's house. And yeah, I would get into these chat rooms and turn into a totally different person. And it was like this way of, being an avatar of some idea of me somewhere else. Super interesting, very creepy. I don't want my kid to have a phone and go on the internet ever.
Ever.
There were no guardrails back then, so it was just,
But I do think it's actually what helped pave the way for queer life in a way. It allowed for more gender and sexual fluidity.
I agree. And even just, I talk about finding your community. If you are living in a small town in the middle of America and you are questioning who you are or your sexuality, or you feel like you might be queer, you can go find that community. And a lot of young people, we all get into our like, we're old and community is in person, but a lot of young people find their community online or on social media or in those ways. And to feel less alone, like, what's so wrong with that? To be able to connect with people who maybe understand you and maybe that you have more in common with them than the people that you're around in your life, and you can see, oh, there is this community that I do belong to. There are these people who are like me out there. They
Yeah.
exist.
Well, let's talk then about your podcast. Why did you, first, I want to know why you created it. And then second, I want to know about the relationship, your friend relationship, and how you guys became co-hosts together.
Okay, so we really created it because I think, especially as female identifying queers, right? You reach this age, and as a woman, I just think your voice, nobody gives a shit about your voice, your opinion, any of it. And so millennials, maybe a lot of us have this like pink me mentality, but it's like how all of my friends, their husbands are always like, "Are you ladies talking about perimenopause again?" And yes, yes, we are, because nobody ever wanted to talk to anybody about it, and we're just changing the conversation there. So I think a lot of starting this podcast was, if we feel like we're not part of the conversation, there's probably a whole queer community out there, people of a certain age, we're not the young ones anymore, we're not hip, like, who also feel that way as well. Right, Erica?
Yes. I think it's all, at least for me, it's visibility as well. So it's having those conversations and acknowledging the conversations that are being missed and opening the door for that. But it's also, a representation of, I always joke, kind of going back to the butch femme, pick your room. I never fit into any of those groups. I call myself a faggot. Like, I am a female gay boy. There's no other way to explain it. And I don't see a lot of myself represented people my age. I can say that. I think there's some younger people that I can see I would identify a similar way. So I think visibility is really important as well. And just taking a risk and putting yourself out there and saying what you need to say. If we can impact and change the life of one person if they're hearing these stories, and I think it's meaningful.
Well, how about the fact that you guys are doing it together and you have different presentations, you have different perspectives, obviously? Like, how did you guys meet?
Friends of friends.
Friends of friends, I think we met through. And then my oldest is the same age as her son. So they became friends. And when you are a parent, if you meet someone that your kid likes their kid and they don't suck, and especially as like, oh, my son has two moms, he has two moms, and they're actually really cool. So the friendship kind of just grew from there. And I am a creative person by nature, but I'm not really a doer, and Erica does too much. And so she knew that I had done a podcast in the past, that I had really wanted to do another one. And so just the more we would just have a bottle of wine or go grab a drink and have these conversations, right? We all, at our age, right? Like, we're in our early 40s, we'll say. A lot of us have gone through the being young, coming out. We talked in our last episode about, oh, what was your first Pride like? But now we're at this age where some of us have children, or we're facing career changes that we didn't expect, or our lives have gone in different directions. What does that queer life look like? And so we just had these conversations together and with our friends, and we were like, I think other people want to be a part of these conversations. And so we took a bet on that.
I mean, even what you're saying right now, you don't normally hear about like queer moms hanging out and then making a podcast together.
I do think that's pretty rare.
Yeah.
Erica, talk to me a little bit about the Pink Robin shop. I know that you are interested in having this business and having this platform, but for people who don't know about it, what is it that you're doing there?
I can tell you how it started and what it's morphing into. I had this idea that I really wanted to have a marketplace for queer-owned brands. Vendors, you're selling something online. I wanted to put it all in one spot to make it easier for people to find and support queer people. It turns out that's really hard. So spent a lot of money building out the platform. And, I do have this brilliant day job that does pay my bills. And it took a lot of time, and I couldn't see it turning the corner without something else giving. And so, the more Laura and I talked about building up this podcast, I'm like, you know what, maybe it's more about the conversations. Maybe it's more about written material. Maybe it's more about, having the podcast, maybe the online magazine that we put out there. But I still think it's in, its toddler stage of what it's going to grow into. And it's just a matter of, keep pounding the drum and getting our names out there and getting people to follow.
It's interesting that you say it that way, though, because coming from the 90s, and I was at alt weeklies, and I wrote for Southern Voice, and I wrote for The Advocate, and I did, in those publications, we would have advertisements for like, find your gay dentist, find your gay doctor, and all of those things
Hmm.
have disappeared as we've gotten more acceptance and gone mainstream. We feel like we don't need those resources. Yet I still want to know how to find, queer businesses. So I think you're right, but it's harder even though it should be easier.
It is certainly a challenge. It's, marketing is a thing, and it takes a lot of time and effort and money. But we did something kind of special there for a few minutes. But I've failed at a lot of things. I don't know. I'm on my like sixth career basically. And I'm okay with that. I'm not afraid of failure. So I just keep going. And if something doesn't work out, I'll be disappointed, sure. But it's like, how do we make the best of the situation? And I think right now, the path that we're on, turning it into more of this media organization and conversations, is exactly where I want it to go.
Hmm. I love that you say that. I think it's always good for people to hear that failing's okay because we get so worried about not making a mistake.
She's telling me this all the time.
Failure is a gift. I don't know. I think it's because I've had so many ups and downs just in my adult life, especially with my career, and I've lived a number of places all over the country for my career and learned just met a lot of people. And some people will stay in the same job and suffer forever instead of just taking a risk on doing something a little different. So I don't know, I'm kind of wired differently that way.
That's great to hear, though. I want to talk about how you guys have discussed on your podcast navigating safety in the current national events and impact on queer families. And yet we are talking about visibility and representation and that tension, right? About like wanting to broadcast one's personal life. I mean, Laura, you write memoir, you share things about your life. I do. We all are out there, but then at the same time, we're worried about that. How do you balance that? And when do you decide, like, I don't want to, I'm going to keep that secret or I'm going to keep that more private? Especially when you're talking all the time on a podcast.
Yeah, I'm so bad at privacy. I am telling you, when social media first started and I was young, I remember my father, who worked in corporate America his whole career, being like, don't put anything on the internet. And I was like, I think I'm actually going to put everything on the internet and share everything. Yeah, and it's much more of a responsibility. At once upon a time, it was just about me. And then my poor wife I've just been airing our dirty laundry for 20 years now. Just everything we go through, it gets written about. And then you have kids and you do start to look at that differently, right? When I'm putting myself out there or going to speak locally at maybe a school board meeting or writing a letter to an editor, and my wife's like, people can find us, people know where we live. Like, we have to protect ourselves and we have to protect the kids. And I think I look at it a little differently. For me, I'm like, this is how I protect my family. I'm a voice, I am a face. I don't feel that I've ever been in a position where I felt at risk or that my family was at risk. So I feel really confident in what I have and who I have around me in being able to be. And that's not to say I haven't read the comments on people who've listened to me speak or read my writing or who just think I'm such an ugly loser with nothing important to say. But those are different, right? Those are different than feeling actual fear. And so I feel like I'm in a place of privilege where I feel safe in my community and my family. And I feel really confident that I do get to kind of live out loud, so to speak. And that's something you just I check in on myself with that with my kids. They're getting older now, right? I can't plaster their cute little toddler faces everywhere. They're becoming their own people. So the conversation changes and it evolves.
Hmm. Well, you did share your story of meeting Sam when you were in a sorority at Emerson, and you've published, your memoir about that. For all the people who listen to this or who are finding your work, they always have questions like, did you ever think that's too much? Or did you ever think like, I don't want to share all of this information?
No, I think when you are someone who, I have my beautiful friend, Kate Billingsley, is an excellent actor, and I watch sometimes her acting or the things she'll do, and I'm like, she is so brave. I would never do that, but it's just in her. She's just born to do this, and I think that's in me, right? And sometimes I'm not writing to be published, and sometimes I'm just in a really dry spell of writing in general, right? But sometimes I just think we all have a lot more in common than we think. So sometimes when I'm sharing something that maybe I should feel a little shame about or maybe is a little weird, I try to remind myself, I'm like, you are never the only person feeling something. Someone else can relate to this.
Well, I want to unpack that. You said something, and this is the therapist in me, I guess. I'm not a therapist, but you said should feel shame about. What should you feel shame about?
If we're anytime we're struggling in our relationships, anytime, I wrote years ago about how in certain situations, I was married, I had a wife, I was proud of that, but there were certain situations where someone would introduce me to someone at a party and I would not mention her, right? Because I didn't, and some of that does come with safety, and some of that just comes with they're gonna look at me different.
Right.
It's gonna get weird, right? So sometimes shame about not being open, and then sometimes shame about just being who you. If you're queer, there's a little bit of shame just racing around inside of you at all times. Maybe I was raised Catholic. There's that. Just anything in life that you're like, oh, I shouldn't be talking about any obstacles my relationships faced, or I shouldn't be talking about how parenting is actually really difficult, right? Because we're taught to that's shameful, but it's really not.
So tell me a little bit more about that. Erica, for example, sometimes we're told we should put our best face forward. We should always be the good gay or the good queer, and we don't want to show the dark side. Have you ever had those experiences where you self-censor?
Constantly, yes. So I have a corporate job. I have most of my career lived in that kind of corporate world. And sometimes there's kind of a lot of pressure, right, to be representative of the LGBTQ community when you're one of, 13 men at a boardroom table. And I always feel that pressure of I have to represent my community in the best way I can. And there's like that under layer of shame that is under that. They will judge me if, right? Where at the end of the day, like the opinion of a mediocre middle-aged white guy is really, it's not on my scale, but it lives in me for some reason. And I think like Laura's really inspired me because she does put herself out there. And so I think pushing myself to do something like this was never, I thought I was going to be behind the scenes. I didn't know I was going to have a microphone and chatting with my best friend. And it turns out that I think the risk is worth it for someone else to hear and see our story and understand that it's okay and you can come out the other side and be successful. So yeah, it's complicated.
It's complicated. Title of the episode.
It's complicated, which is something the millennials gave us, and that became a relationship status.
It did, yes.
Speaking of, you both frequently critique how queer love, couples therapy, and modern intimacy are portrayed in mainstream media. And I'm also, this is where I'm finally going to get into our deep dive into romance literature and romance books. And you and Laura both have this public obsession with the queer romance novel Heated Rivalry, or at least with the TV show. So, and I just want to say, Laura, you wrote about Heated Rivalry in an essay we published on Queer Love Project.
Yes.
Yeah, it was titled Why Heated Rivalry Reheated My Own Sapphic Love Story. So, first, okay, can we just say it's impossible that this show is still so popular, right? I mean, like people are still talking about it. They're still reheating. They're still waiting for the next book, and they want to know everything about Shane and Ilya. I actually went to the musical parody that's in New York and saw that a couple weeks ago, and it's so much fun. So if you get a chance to see the Heated Rivalry parody, it's great. But tell me, I mean, what is up with this male romance, and why are sapphic ladies into this as well?
Okay, I'm jumping right in. I feel like I have been laughed at by so many people for years because they're like, why do you sometimes, I'll read some literature and then I'll be like, I need just like a palate cleanser, and it'll just be like an M for M, like especially a sports something off limits, of course. My sister she reads these like motorcycle gang romance books, and she was like, some of them, the guys fall in love, and so she tells me about those. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like women and queer women are just into that vulnerability, I guess, of seeing men love and feel, and it feels more natural, I guess, when it's two men. You're kind of, everyone just assumes you've lost the masculinity,
Mhm.
but with heated rivalry, it's like so pivotal to the story that you get that, right? So you get the tenderness too. I don't know. I don't feel like I'm making sense. I'm just blushing 'cause I love it so much.
Erica, have you watched?
So I didn't read the books. She's read all the books. I did watch, and I had my first reheat Memorial Day weekend, I
And the
think.
reheat was better than the first
The
time, like I told
reheat
you, wasn't it?
was spectacular. I had tears. I was in my hotel room, just like,
And you
under
watch
the
all of it,
covers.
or do you skip episode 3
Oh no,
and
there's no
just go to
skipping. You
5?
need the
Okay.
whole story. Yeah. For me, it's one. I've been attracted to like M for M relationships for a very long time. I'm openly pansexual. I think that people put too many borders on what love means or what attraction means, and I think it's crazy because we're all just human at the end of the day. And there's usually a person in that body that you're falling in love with or you're attracted to. It's not the body. So for me, I don't know. It was so heartwarming to see a story where the other shoe didn't drop. You're waiting
Mhm.
for it the entire time, right? Like every story that we have, been blessed with. We were just talking about The Kids Are All
The
Right.
kids are all right.
And we were like, that was so messed up. Of course.
Something
Yeah.
just always has to
You
go
know?
so wrong.
You just want it to end with something that just feels like light and love, like the sunset, right? Like you want it to feel like that.
Yeah.
And this story did. And I thought they did a beautiful job. The actors are obviously amazing, but I just love where it ended.
I agree with you, and it's funny because when I got my gay pals together to watch it the third time I was watching it, they were like, "What? Why are we watching this? This is bad." And I was like, "No, no, stick with it." Because at first we think, "Oh, it's just, the hotness of the shower, it's seeing all of
Hmm.
that." And then it gets its hooks in you. But I also think it's really definitely created with the way the art direction is and the lighting. Like by the end, there's like they're always in these dark rooms, and then it light, then we're at the cottage and it's light and it's like
Yeah.
everything's
Yeah.
open and sunshine and pretty, and we don't get that. You're right. Like it really works.
Or just like kissing outside. I think that's something queer people can relate to. You're hiding in corners, you're sneaking into bathrooms, right? For so many of us early in our relationships. And like, what is it like to kiss outside in the sunlight?
I agree, and PDA is something I still struggle with, and I feel like every time I do that, like on the subway or on the street, or even like when my husband and I say like, "Oh, are we gonna hold hands?" Like we kind of are silly about it because we're like, this feels so forced, even though my parents would do it. It
Hmm.
looked easy to me when my parents did it too, but I'm just like, why is it still like a hang up that I have? Like, oh, I'm gonna make this decision, right, to kiss my husband, who I've been with for 25 years, so.
Right? Because everything's a decision. Again, it goes back to sometimes safety or that little bit of shame or am I in a friendly place? And there's always, right? Like, you're right. Like, I've just watched my parents my whole life just be affectionate with each other openly anywhere we are. And it's so silly that we have to be like, is this okay?
I think part of it's attention. Like sometimes I just don't want the attention. Like I'm a
Right.
walking rainbow billboard anyway, so I get attention no matter what, but sometimes it's like I don't want the look.
Well, it's funny that you say that because, we're in Pride Month. It's, that time of year when everybody, at least for me, comes to New York City and I see all the little queerlings and they're so excited to hold hands and be gay. And I
Yay!
do give them the attention and the smile, but then I'm like, oh wait, maybe I shouldn't be doing that.
Do
You
they
know,
think I'm
like,
It's
creepy?
the smile matters. It's the
yeah,
other looks that are not
yeah,
as fun.
yeah.
It's
Um,
validating.
So, I was recently in Asbury Park for their Pride Parade, which was adorable, by the way. It was my first time in Asbury. The most redneck thing that happened was they actually had an axe throwing float. There was a guy in a cage throwing an axe, and I thought that I've never seen that in a Pride Parade, and I've been to hundreds.
Yeah.
So, tell me a little bit. I mean, you mentioned that you talked about this on your podcast, but tell me a little bit about what Pride, like, do you go to parades now? Do you bring your kids? Is it a no-no thing? Is it a yes thing? Like, I want to know.
Yeah, we were just talking about how it's Pride is so different when you're like young and in your 20s, or maybe it's your first Pride. And as you said, you're like, I'm going to just kiss my girlfriend on this street corner because I'm like, this is where we belong. And then last year we went with our wives and our kids to New York City Pride. And that was my kids. I think that was yours first experience, right?
I think it was his third.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's third, excuse me. So it was my kids' first experience with New York City Pride. They've done, smaller ones here in the Hudson Valley. And it's different, right? It's not the same as going to a party on the pier and getting drunk and making out with girls, but it's also so special to show your family this and to just have it kind of evolve and be different. And yeah.
Yeah, and what we were saying the other day, it's also important for our kids to see other queer families
Right.
in the same sense, when we were the young queerlings and we were surrounded by people just like us, and it just felt so liberating. I think the exposure is really important. I think it was I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago we went, and my friend, who is my son's, chosen gunkle situation, he brought all of his friends who were, of course, in like mesh shirts and, nipple tape and glitter and short shorts. And, the boys were being the boys. And I did not feel weird at all for my son to be there. I want him to see this. It wasn't overly sexualized. It was just a different expression. And, I just think it's important that our kids are exposed to that, because there are so many kids in this country who they don't see anything that is slightly different. And I think that is the problem.
The first time I knew about Pride, I was living in South Georgia, and there was a guy I went to high school with, and he had two moms. One was a cop, and the other was a university professor. And they would go to Atlanta Pride, and they would be at the front of the parade with the dykes on bikes. And I remember them coming back showing pictures of like women with their breasts out, and it was exciting. And I was like, oh my God, I need to do that. So my first Pride years later was in Atlanta, but it was great,
Yes.
like seeing that was something you could be not ashamed of, because it's like, wait, should I be seeing my friend's mom's tits? Like, I don't know if that's okay, but it's what happened.
We
But
also
no.
took our kids to they do something here in the Hudson Valley called Pride in the Sky, and so they had like the giant, how big was it, like 100 feet,
More than that.
the
Yeah,
pride
it's
flag
huge.
and the trans flag, and our kids we have a picture of them just right at the very front, so everybody carries the flags across the bridge. It's a footbridge, and just having them be a part of that and carrying the flags, and it was just it's just so nice to do it and to feel that community.
I'm gonna read something to you that I've been talking about for a while, but I actually read it in my friend. I'm mentioning Hugh again. Hugh Ryan has a new book out called My Bad, which I hope to talk to him about it soon. But in it, he says, queerness is a fickle blessing. Unlike religion, ethnicity, class, or race, it's rarely shared between parents and children or neighbor with neighbor. Queer people don't often grow up experiencing gatherings of others like us. And when we make those gatherings as adults, they are more likely to be diverse out of necessity. And I was curious what you thought about that, because it's something I think about all the time and I talk to people about, because I'm like, most of us don't have gay parents or queer parents or trans parents. And then we try to figure out how do we put ourselves together? And you're talking about this with Pride, but it's not the only place. And do you guys have other moments of that, or how do your kids, are they rebelling against it? I'm curious.
I mean, our kids are still young, so right now they're still pretty into it. Erica has heard me talk about this a million times, but something that is a hugely joyful part of my adult queer life and my life in parenting is that I come from straight world, so I have great supportive friends and family, but most of them are straight, and that's fine. And I thought that my kids would grow up in that world and it would be okay. But instead, my kids have so many friends with queer parents, and it's completely normal, bordering on boring to them. And I just am regularly shocked that that is their experience growing up, because I did not think I would be able to give that to them. And that is, yeah, that I love that line, the queerness is a fickle blessing, because sometimes I'm like, I just can't believe this is like their life. And that to me is just such an enormous part of growing up, finding your community, and then seeing how can we make this different for our kids. And yeah, they might not identify as queer, but I think they'll always identify as being part of this community.
What do you think, Erica?
I think what's important is like diversity is adding like richness, right? Like there's texture to it. There's just so much more to being exposed and being around diverse communities that I can't imagine raising my son in any sort of, the way I grew up or the way, my wife grew up. He's so inherently, like kids are always inherently open-minded, but then they learn from their parents and their communities how to be terrible, right? And how to be judgmental and how to put people in boxes. And he is growing up kind of in the opposite way, where he's just more open because of the diversity he's surrounded by. And I think, he's had a non-binary friend since he was like 4 years old, 5 years old. And he corrects people and says, no, they, them, not she or he. He's correcting, other kids that aren't a part of, they're just like at the pool. And I think about that and I'm like, it's so natural for him. And it's so nonchalant. He doesn't care. Like what Laura said, it's borderline boring for him. And I just, like, we've created just such a, I don't know, richer childhood for him.
I agree. And it's interesting though, I remember my resistance to the pronoun changes and feeling like I was being a fusty editor person. And actually the one time it really came up was because of Eileen Miles, and it was because I was working at Rolling Stone and we had just published a piece about Chelsea Girls being reissued, and it used their previous pronouns, and I was so angry because the publicist was like, I know you just published this, but Eileen is now using they them pronouns and we need you to change this. And I was like, what do you mean, and I was like, this is so whatever. And now it doesn't bother me, but this was just like 10 years ago and I was so angry about it, and I was like, no, I'm not going to change them, or what does this matter, or whatever. And now I'm like, yeah, okay, sure, and I can incorporate it. But it's been a rocky road over the last decade, I'd say.
Yeah, for sure. And also, language matters. So for any of us out there, I got a straight boomer mom and I love her, but she'll be like, well, explain this, explain pronouns, explain. And I'm like, I can explain it to you, but it also doesn't really matter if you truly understand it, because it's just about having respect for people. If I tell you to call me Laura, and you call me another name, right? That's just disrespectful. So there's this thing of like, and especially for queer communities, like language matters. So for us to then not respect that, yeah, sometimes there's going to be a learning curve, but eventually I think we all get on board.
Well, this is a good segue for a question I have for you, because I do remember you making sure that I use the word sapphic, and that is a word and a phrase and a concept that has really grown in popularity in the last, I would say, 15 years, and it's become this umbrella term. And I was curious about that word and why it matters.
For me, I love an umbrella term. I think that when I was young, I did not identify as part of the LGBTQ community at all. I grew up thinking I'm straight, I'm gonna find a husband, this or that. And so when I did fall in love with Sam, my wife, and it was the early 2000s, again, as Erica said earlier, you could be this or that. So suddenly it was like, oh, Laura's a lesbian now. And I knew that didn't quite fit, but I also didn't really have language. Bisexual was just everybody made fun of you if you dared to identify that way back then. So for years, it was like if I wrote something or published something or just the way people would talk about me, it was the word lesbian, and it just never quite fit for me. And so being able to then eventually use the word queer, and then when I consider my own relationship with my life, yes, people are going to be like, oh, the lesbian's down the street, or oh, it's a lesbian relationship. So on some level, I absolutely understand that. But anytime I'm in control of the language, I don't think that that's what my relationship is. So sapphic, love an umbrella term. To me, sapphic is two people who identify as women being in love with each other. And so
Right.
that's feels right for me.
Erica, anything to say about that?
I have nothing I do like the word sapphic, but I never thought about it in that way. I don't have any strong feelings, but
You
even
don't
the
have
word
strong feelings?
About the word sapphic.
no, but even that word queer, it was complicated. When I was at Out Magazine, we had definitely older generation of gay men who were like, "We fought so hard, and now you're using this epithet, and we don't like it." And I remember us having to negotiate about it, and when we would use it, and how we would use it. And I mean, this is the thing: when you work in media, you have to have rules, and you have to come up with a guide, and it keeps changing, and so people don't like that. I actually, and when I was at Rolling Stone, we actually had people from GLAAD come talk to the staff because I hired a non-binary employee, and I was really worried that they were going to get some sort of bias against them. And so I was like, we're just going to educate everybody, and we're going to talk about this because also our copy editors and our fact checkers need to understand. And it was like a big sea change, and I didn't want it to just be coming from me. I wanted to have like an outside expert um, talk about that. But so to shift gears slightly, in the second season of your podcast, you talked about queer joy quite a bit, right? That was sort of a theme, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and when you asked me about queer joy, I was like, I don't have an answer right away. And I did come up with this idea of this being the safe space when I've gone to Cherry Grove. I was just there last week for actually a woman who it identifies as straight, but she loves going to Cherry Grove because it's a safe space for her as a woman. And she also says, I think I'm gender nonconforming because I'm a 50-year-old woman who doesn't want kids or a relationship, and that's not very normal for a woman. So I feel like this is my space, and it was great. But after that, I will say, after the episode when we recorded, I immediately had a new answer because I went and saw Cats the Jellicle Ball on Broadway. And I have to say, it is pure queer joy. I was like, I've never been in a space that is more joy and just absolutely amazing. So if you get a chance to bring your kids or you go, if you haven't seen it, Jellicle Ball is amazing. And I never liked Cats until now.
Okay.
Okay. My wife hates cats. And so when we heard this was coming out, I was like, yay, let's go. And she
like,
now
"No."
needs to listen to
It
you say that.
it
So
will blow your mind. It's like it's a totally different thing. As one friend told me, she was like, "This show has not been finished for 40 years, and this is finally the show it's supposed to be." Like it's just absolutely out of control, amazing. Like it's not
that's
Cats,
exciting.
it's something else. And it's ballroom, so it's fun.
Yeah.
But so
Yeah.
what? How have you guys been defining this over the past season or over the past year? What is queer joy?
I think, I don't know, for me, it's not something that is like can be defined in this one moment and then that's a permanent thing. So queer joy is like literally being open to anything that comes your way that sparks your inspiration or love or whatever that could be. It's like realizing that it's constantly evolving and just recognizing those kind of like those small things. For me, queer joy recently has been less scrolling on my phone and more nature. Like, I just want to look at wildflowers. I just want to see like beautiful sky, and I want to put my feet in the grass. And it just feels like this, I don't know, evolving sort of. It will probably be something else, you know, if I go see Cats, the Jellicle Ball. It'll be that at that point. But it's really just being open minded to anything that comes my way.
But so it's touch grass, but we're not going to say touch grass.
Exactly.
And Laura?
Yeah, I feel like I'm kind of a broken record because a big part of it is raising my kids with so much queer community. A big part of it is this podcast that we created, getting to meet so many interesting people. They're, you know, queer is this thing that so many of us just kind of become defined by, right? It's the most obvious thing, but we meet these people all the time who are so fascinating and interesting and have such different lives. And it's the one thing that we can all agree on is maybe that we're all queer when we're having these conversations on Unseen, but just really getting to meet all these cool people because there is just a degree of bravery that every queer person is bringing to their lives. And so hearing their stories and what's bringing them joy and who they are and what they're up to and their creativity, it's brought me so much joy.
I love that. That's true. All right. Well, you inspired me also to have a little bit of rapid question, and I did not prep you on this. So these are going to be easy.
No.
I'm so bad at this.
Well, you give it, so you have to take it. So,
You're right. You are right.
these are all pop culture questions, and I'm always interested in how people balance, like the big topics and then the pop culture. So the first one is, and I'll just say, Laura, I want you to tell me what is your favorite show of the moment, or if you don't have one of the moment, of all time.
I have been really bad with watching television as of late. Have we talked about Roseanne? Because that is my like warm comforter, cozy bed at the end of the night comfort show. And I want to tell you something.
You're not
Roseanne
a Friends
did.
girly, you're a Roseanne girly.
I'm a Roseanne girly, a little edgier. But yeah, rewatching some of those episodes, I mean, they did gay storylines. Like they had so much fun with things that at the time weren't quite being done. And so, yes, we can kind of talk about the direction things went in and that Roseanne went off the rails and turned out not to be the greatest. But if you get me on the early seasons of Roseanne, I feel like it's really heartwarming, a family that struggles but really loves each other, and they deal with some of these big issues in life. So that is my comfort food.
And I really related to Darlene in whatever weird, messed up teenage way she was dealing with life.
Right? Yes. Like just kind of bitchy and angry at everybody. I was like, I get it.
Erica, what about you?
Oh my goodness. I watched recently the series Imperfect Women with Kerry Washington. I just thought that was brilliant. It was so good. A little dramatic, spicy. But right now I'm really enjoying the second season of 4 seasons. And it's just campy and funny, but it has like real midlife relationship problems, and they have this tension. I don't know if you've seen it, but
I haven't watched it. Everybody has been talking about it. It's on Netflix, and it just got renewed for another season, but I haven't watched it.
it's great. And like they shoot in the Hudson Valley, so we see a lot of our like
Yeah.
Oh, that's fun.
familiar things. But no, I just love the way they bring humor to often like really painful, hard topics, but at the same time, it's I just feel like it's good to watch. So yeah, I'm enjoying
That's
it.
a good one. I need to actually dip into that. I've been meaning to. I've been watching and binging For All Mankind. Have you ever watched that on Apple TV?
No.
So
It sounds very familiar.
it came out years ago. It's based on all history about the space race and the United States versus Soviet Union. But there's this amazing season and storyline about a lesbian astronaut who becomes the first female president as well. Not to
Whoa.
spoil anything. It's worth it.
Whoa.
Okay,
Um,
I mean that sounds great.
That sounds like
yeah.
my cup of tea.
It's a weird all history, but it's actually amazing because all the women are in power. It's all about how like women get the ERA passes, like women are just elevated, but then they still have the same issues even though they're like the president. So
Okay, I gotta
anyway.
watch that.
tracks.
All right, so we're gonna talk about. I'm curious, especially because I know music has probably changed for both of you. Is there a song that gets you in the mood? And I want to know what that mood. I'm not going to tell you what mood means. It can mean whatever it means. But what's a song that gets you in the mood? It can be the thing that gets you out of bed. It can be the thing that gets you. I don't know anything. Is there a song that you go to when you're like, I need that change?
You're like, let me make you a whole playlist.
I would, in fact, I do. I know you would. Yeah, I am like the original mixtape girly, where
I
I'm like,
love it.
oh, here you have this thing. I'm gonna make you a
What would be
mixtape.
first
And
on
then,
that mixtape?
oh my goodness. Well, that's
This is a very
I think
tough
the key part of your question is mood, and then not defining the mood because it could be anything. I'm an OG like Fleetwood Mac, love anything that comes on Fleetwood Mac. I just obsessed, and then it's just like nostalgia. I don't know, it just always feels good. But there's a group called Shalou that I'm obsessed with, and there are several songs. And yeah, I can't pick one. That's the problem of being like a pansexual. There's not just one for me.
And what's your sign? I should ask because you're both millennial.
I'm a Virgo,
Okay.
a pretty type A
Because I was
traditional
going to say
Virgo,
I'm a
yes.
Gemini, and I know I can't decide one thing either because, you know. How about you, Laura? A song?
Also very difficult. I would say for most of my adult life, Whipping Post. That's Allman Brothers, right? Yeah. The live version that I used to have on my record player in college, it's like 15 minutes long, but that is the song that can get me angry or happy or amped up, it can do almost anything I need it to do. It like windows down, scream out the window. So that one really gets me in the mood for something.
And that's like dad classic rock, so I wouldn't expect
I
it.
love classic. Yeah. That's my
does.
millennial, right? Because I was coming of age when it was like 60s, 70s.
Bruce
That's
Yeah, yeah.
cool.
Springsteen,
Yeah, I love me some
Bob
Bruce.
Seger.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, one of the things actually I love that millennials gave us was our reappreciation of Fleetwood Mac because growing up, we were like, they're not cool. We would not admit that we liked Fleetwood Mac because it was just like our parents' music. And we are like, this is not something we're allowed to like. But secretly, we liked it. And now
I
we can
listened to so
all-
much Fleetwood Mac from high school onward.
Yeah.
How can you not? Gypsy? Shut up.
I know. But it was like one of these things, it's hard. I mean, you probably have heard this about us Gen Xers about how we had to be cool and think that we
Yeah.
were, we couldn't be like,
I get it.
couldn't like the popular thing. We always had to like
Yeah.
the esoteric thing. All right, so this is one last question that I'm curious to know, and this might be more of an Erica question, but I want to know from both of you. If you could give a listener just one non-negotiable piece of advice on how to intentionally spend their dollars or their energy to support the queer community right now, what would it be?
Oh man, that is really challenging.
Make a large anonymous donation to Unseen Podcast.
It's so hard because, especially during Pride Month, we are swarmed with rainbow logos and, well, not so much anymore. We used to be, right? Where I got sucked into buying the rainbow Under Armour sneakers or the Reebok shirt that had a rainbow on it, right?
Anything at Target?
Yep.
Yeah, it just, that isn't what matters. What matters is supporting organizations like Laura's a co-founder of Defense of Democracy, where it's really grassroots level and they do a lot of good work, or larger organizations like the ACLU, Human Rights Campaign, where they just have a lot of, power behind what they're trying to accomplish that actually impacts our community. So it's either like one of the two things, the really grassroots organizations that we've seen, Defense of Democracy is like battling against Moms for Liberty, and it matters for us because of, the type of education our kids will receive. So
Okay, but if we also want to have fun and spend money, which some people want to do, I used to buy my whole family like the Old Navy Pride shirts, and now it's, if I'm like, oh, I want something new for Pride, where I'll find a queer creator on Etsy who's designing shirts, right? Who maybe a little bit of what they're making each month is going to a good cause, right? So and I am so one of those millennial moms who's always trying to save a buck. And I'm like, oh, I hate Walmart, but it's cheaper to buy all my kids' stuff that, So it's like just saying, okay, I could spend a little more and get something that's supporting a real person and maybe a real queer person instead of the crap that is actually working against us with our own money.
I do have to say that is one of my superpowers, is that I seek and support a lot of queer people. Just generally, I will spend too much money. I won't
Yes, you
need
will.
half of the things, and then I give it all away. But it's just really important to show up for them.
Absolutely. Well, this has been lovely. You guys have shared so much, and I've learned new things, which is always the point of this. And we'll have all these recommendations in the show notes, and everybody can learn and find Unseen and listen to all of the 2 seasons. And you're going to begin the new season. Do you know when that will launch?
Probably the fall.
Fall.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're dropping a couple bonus episodes this summer.
Okay, good. So they can be on the lookout for the bonus episodes. But thank you, Laura and Erica, for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank you
This
so
was
much.
so much fun, even the rapid fire questions. It was great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And if you're a new listener to the Queer Love Podcast and aren't already a subscriber to the Queer Love Project, you can find us on Substack. It's a platform where LGBTQ plus people can share stories and experiences about whatever love means to them. We keep all our words free and publish original personal essays and interviews every week. So go to queerloveproject.substack.com and subscribe and support us today.